What is going on, everybody? Happy 808 day. My name is TAETRO, and today, of course, I'm going to be showing you a really simple way to set up some fire 808s in Ableton Live. Real quick before we get too deep into it, if you enjoy live electronic music performances, tutorials, and content to make you a more productive producer, click the subscribe button down below. I'm doing lots of different music production tutorials, live streams, beat making videos with different MIDI controllers, and if that's something that you're into, I think you'll really enjoy the channel. The thing is, about 80%-ish of my watch time comes from people who are not subscribed to the channel, which is just crazy to me. So if you are coming back and watching multiple videos on the channel, or you like this video, subscribe and stay tuned for future content because I don't think you'll be disappointed. Okay, so anyway, today we're going to be using Ableton Live, and I've just got a drum loop already prepared. Just a very, very simple drum loop, and let's put an 808 to go with this drum loop. And to do that, I'm actually going to do this using a MIDI track. So I'm going to insert a new MIDI track, Command-Shift-T. And my MIDI tracks come with a basic audio processing rack on them because that's how I've kind of made it work. But I'm going to delete that for now so I can match your experience the best. Now on that MIDI track, we're going to put a simpler instrument. So I'm going to go to Instruments and to Simpler. Now if you don't know, this is a sampler, essentially, but it's a simpler version of the proper sampler tool. It's kind of a cheeky name there. And as you can see right here in Simpler, it says drop sample here. And even with this track armed and on, I can play all the notes on my keyboard that I want and no sound will come out because we don't have a sample in there yet. So this is where you get to pick what kind of 808 sample you want to have. And of course, 808s come in all different shapes, sounds, and sizes. If we just search in our little sample section here, we'll get a ton of samples, probably depending on your library size. Mine is way too big. We'll get different things like toms or snares. That's not really what we're looking for, of course. We're looking for more like kick sub 808s. Like I said, they come in all shapes, sizes, sounds, all that. Really looking for something with a tone here for this style 808 that we're working with today. You want the 808 to sound like it's actually making a note. Now, I actually use Splice a lot. This is not a sponsored video or anything, but it just makes searching for samples a little bit easier in my mind. So I've actually already downloaded some samples. And I'm really a big fan of this 808 right here. It's nice and long, and also it's got a nice hit at the beginning. So I'm actually going to drag this right into my Simpler. And then, now if I play the keyboard, amazing, we get a playable instrument. Very cool. Next step here, depending on the sample that you grabbed, is we want to make sure that the sample is in tune. So I'm going to go to Audio Effects. I'm going to find my tuner. Now, 808s are usually a very low, bassy instrument, especially if I get down here. Like, tuner is not going to pick up the really sub-frequency there. Maybe even your speakers or headphones that you're listening on didn't even pick up some of those sub-frequencies. So for a deeper 808, I'm actually going to bring the octave up, and this might not necessarily be the range that we're going to play it in, but it's going to make sure that our tuner is registering the note. Cool, and the tuner can register the note at this octave, so that's pretty good. What you'll notice, those of you who are familiar with a keyboard, is that I'm playing a C here on the keyboard. But if we take a look at our tuner, we're getting an A flat, and that is not what we want at all. We want the note that we're hearing to match the note that we're playing. So we need to transpose this sample. Now we can do this very easily by jumping over to one-shot here. The difference in this mode is now if I play in one-shot mode, I don't have to hold that key down. It'll just play through the entire sample. But this also gives us access to this handy transpose knob. So of course, if we want to go from A flat to C, we want to just go up. So we hit C. That's C sharp right there. So plus 4 semitones right here, that gets us a C. So now when we play a C on the keyboard, we'll get a solid C in our ears. Now, I might not want to just press the key and have the entire sample play. I might want to go back to actually having to hold down the keys, in which case I can just jump back to classic mode in the simpler, and we are good to go. It maintained the pitch of the sample even though we jumped back to classic mode. Now, right now, our sample is not warped, meaning that when we play it as a lower note, it'll take longer to play through the sample. When we play it as a higher note on the keyboard, it'll actually play the sample much faster. And we don't necessarily want that. We actually want to warp the sample, and sometimes I use the tones warp mode. I bounce between tones or complex depending on the sound, but this will allow us to have the sample be uniform no matter where we're playing it on the octaves of the keyboard. So now we can probably just start playing along with our drum loop. And that's a perfectly fine 808 sample, I guess. It's probably super loud in my mix right now, so I can bring the volume down. And one really popular aspect of 808s is that instead of playing each note where they all have their own attack, we can actually set it up so that we can glide between notes. So in the simpler, if I go over to controls here, notice I have a little glide setting, which I can set to portamento. And this time value right here is actually what's going to decide, how dramatic that glide is. Let me show you an example. So this is the default setting, 50 milliseconds. I'm not really hearing much of a glide at all. But as I start to crank this number, let's go up, practically double it to 100. Now we start to hear the glide. If I crank that even more, it'll get more and more dramatic. So depending on your taste or the sound that you're going for, you can definitely change up this glide yourself and you have a nice gliding 808. I'm going to keep mine at pretty high, like 175. Now, if I do play separate notes that are not any way connected, I'll still get the attack of each note. But if those notes start to overlap in a sort of legato way, meaning that the end of the last note meets the beginning of the next note, that's when the glide will be engaged. So we've got a cool gliding 808 sound, but what if we want to beef it up a little bit? Well, there's an audio effect in Ableton Live called pedal. Now, I think most people might go for overdrive, but I've been really liking the way pedal sounds. So I'm going to drop pedal onto my 808 track. Now, that's still a fair amount of overdrive there, so we can dial it back even more, but you can do it to taste how you like to hear it. You can also pull back or push up on some bass signals. And that's a judgment call you have to make based on your listening. I highly recommend, if you don't have super robust studio monitors, that you go listen to stuff in your car, because usually cars have really good subs. But yeah, now we've got a nice beefy gliding 808 using Ableton Live's simpler. And the last step is to really just record a musical idea on top of your drum loop. One last tip, and this can be pretty contentious among different producers depending on who you ask, but you can also sidechain your 808 to your kick, meaning that when the kick signal comes through, your 808 will kind of duck under it. I suggest doing this in a really subtle way, and how we set that up is by dropping a compressor onto our 808. We're going to open up the little side menu here. We're going to turn on sidechain, and we're going to find our kick. So the kick is in my track 13 drum rack, and then within this we're just going to grab the pre-effects signal. So now if I bring this threshold down to say about 25-ish, now that's pretty intensely ducking my 808 underneath my kick, but those two things usually compete quite a bit, especially an 808 like this that has such a hitting kick attack to it. So like I said, I would do this subtly if you are going to sidechain. So I'd pull back on the dry wet a bit. It does just enough to make sure there's not too much of a conflict between that 808 and that kick. Right, so that is how to really easily and simply create an 808 in the Simpler using Ableton Live. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please click that subscribe button down below for more live electronic music performances, tutorials, and content to make you a more productive producer. Lots of beat making, live streams, and tutorials, things like that, using the new MPK. I've also got a couple new MIDI controllers coming in within the next couple weeks and months as well. So make sure you're subscribed, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy, and comment below, let me know what you thought of the tutorial, or if you have any 808 tips to share with the community. Thank you so much for watching. This has been TAETRO, your electronic music mentor. Have a good one.